Hi guys, in today's video, we'll discuss an interview given by Zelensky in which he mentioned being open to temporarily ceding territories to Russia, provided that NATO extends a formal invitation for Ukraine to join. Since the beginning of the invasion, Russia has justified its actions by claiming to protect Russian-speaking populations in eastern Ukraine and to prevent what it calls NATO's expansion into Russia's sphere of influence. The invasion and occupation of territories like Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhzhia were accompanied by referendums organized by Russia, referendums rejected as illegitimate by the international community. The Russian invasion has caused widespread destruction, with an estimated 300,000 military casualties on both sides. For Ukrainian civilians, the impact has been especially devastating, including millions of internally displaced people, destruction of essential infrastructure, and bombings of civilian targets such as hospitals and schools. Western countries, led by the United States and NATO members, have provided billions of dollars in military and humanitarian aid to Ukraine, including air defense systems, advanced munitions, and military training, which have been crucial for sustaining Ukraine's resistance. However, this support has also sparked internal tensions in the West, with some questioning the financial and political costs of prolonged aid. Rewinding to earlier stages of the war, after initial Russian advances, the conflict reached a stalemate. Ukraine managed to regain parts of the lost territory in 2022, but its counteroffensive in 2023, aimed at liberating other regions, was largely unsuccessful, primarily due to a lack of air support for advancing infantry and armored units. The resulting war of attrition has drained resources on both sides, making a diplomatic solution more urgent yet increasingly complex. Now, at the end of 2024, Russia, heavily bolstered by allies like Iran and especially North Korea, has launched a series of localized offensives focusing on the Donetsk region. Starting in September, Russian forces have achieved significant territorial gains. These advances, coupled with profound shifts in the U.S. geopolitical landscape following Donald Trump's election, have contributed to a drastic change in Volodymyr Zelensky's stance. Zelensky, who has always opposed any territorial concessions, now suggests that Ukraine might temporarily cede territories to Russia in exchange for NATO security guarantees. But what has driven this shift? In recent interviews, Zelensky stated that placing Ukrainian-controlled territories under NATO's protection could end what he called the hot phase of the conflict, suggesting that diplomatically recovering Russian-occupied areas could be a future option. This shift partly reflects the ongoing toll of the war, with Ukraine facing severe challenges in keeping its armed forces well-equipped and motivated. Moreover, the economic devastation and strain on the civilian population increased the appeal of even a temporary solution. Despite proposing immediate NATO protection for Ukrainian territories, Zelensky recognizes that this idea faces resistance within the alliance itself. Countries like the United States and Germany are hesitant to fast-track Ukraine's membership, fearing direct escalation with Russia. Another obstacle is Ukraine's constitution, which does not permit territorial concessions. Zelensky finds himself trapped between the need to defend his country and the internal and international resistance to the concessions he proposes. The return of Donald Trump to the U.S. presidency further complicates this equation. Trump, who has criticized the West's approach to Ukraine, promised during his campaign to end the conflict in a single day. His team has suggested a peace deal that would freeze current front lines and delay Ukraine's NATO aspirations for up to 20 years. In return, the U.S. would continue arming Ukraine to deter future Russian attacks. Zelensky has expressed strong opposition to such a deal, insisting that halting the hot phase of the conflict is acceptable only if it comes with a formal NATO invitation and membership process. Trump is known for his more conciliatory stance toward Vladimir Putin. During his first term, Trump avoided openly criticizing the Russian leader and sought a less confrontational relationship. This approach worries Ukraine's allies, who fear that Trump's return might weaken U.S. support for Kyiv. Aware of this reality, Zelensky has made efforts to establish a direct line of communication with Trump. He has emphasized the need to avoid intermediaries that might complicate relations and expressed a willingness to work with Trump to find a new approach that prioritizes Ukraine's interests. With Trump on the horizon, Zelensky faces a profound strategic dilemma. He must balance the need to secure continued U.S. support with maintaining his firm stance against Russia. Any miscalculated concession could undermine his political standing and erode the Ukrainian people's trust. But what does all of this mean for Ukraine, Russia, and the global balance of power? What are the broader implications of this strategic shift, and how are other international actors reacting? If Ukraine accepts a deal that temporarily cedes territories, this could be seen as a strategic victory for Vladimir Putin. Consolidating control over occupied areas would legitimize his domestic narrative and weaken NATO's position in Eastern Europe. Meanwhile, Ukraine's European allies face their own internal challenges. Many countries, especially in Western Europe, are dealing with economic crises and public pressure to reduce war-related spending. This internal division might hinder a coordinated response to proposals from Zelensky or Trump. And let's not forget that the conflict in Ukraine is just one reflection of a much broader struggle for global power. China, for example, is watching closely, evaluating how the West responds to this conflict, particularly given its own ambitions in Taiwan, which might involve military action. A solution involving significant territorial concessions could weaken the West's position in other global disputes. Finally, the impact on Ukrainians themselves cannot be overlooked. Any agreement involving territorial concessions would be highly controversial within the country. For many, such a deal might be seen as a betrayal of the sacrifices made throughout the war. We are clearly at a crucial moment for Ukraine and the world. Zelensky's statements and the imminent leadership change in the United States have created a new and unpredictable scenario. Will Ukraine be able to maintain its sovereignty and territory, or are we witnessing the beginning of a new era of concessions and global rebalancing? Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the best news from the military and political world.